Jared Goff and CJ Stroud combined for 7 interceptions on Sunday Night Football. That just put a bow on a terrible day for fantasy football. We dig into the worst, best, and most surprising performances of Week 10 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. We're here Monday through Friday helping you win your fantasy football leagues. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Vinny, normally we start with the best plays of the week, but this week I want to start with the worst place because this week in fantasy, besides the Thursday night football game, was just gross. Week 10 actually gave us the fewest total fantasy points on a Sunday, and not only any week this season, but any football Sunday over the last 6 seasons in half PPR. Now, if you do PPR leagues, fewest points per game in any Sunday of a football Sunday over the last 14 seasons. That's how few fantasy points were scored yesterday. So let's talk about these disappointing games. And we got to start with Sunday Night Football. Both these quarterbacks could not stop turning over the ball, Vinny.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on with Jared Goff. He wasn't seeing the field properly because he just missed some guys that were flashing around in coverage and just was off. He just had a bad game and a bad night. It can happen. He just wasn't prepared. And I've said this all along. Jared Goff is dependent on the running game. He needs the running game opening up things and then throwing into the middle field. When he gets out of that element, he's heaving up balls to Jameson Williams without context. It's usually not good. He's not a gunslinging type quarterback. He thinks he is, I think, at certain times where he can complete the ball in any tight window and any coverage. No, he needs things to progress well. And I know the Texans had a tough run defense, but what happened? The Lions, when they were trailing, got a few breaks. They started running the ball. When they got some takeaways themselves, they ran the ball. All of a sudden, Dave Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs were making things happen. Then all of a sudden, Amon-Ra St. Brown saw things open up in the middle of the field and scored a touchdown. So, again, sometimes it's a complete operation. And with Jared Goff, it seems like he needs both things to work. I think that'll happen this week against the Jaguars. It should be a get-well game at home. This is a tough road matchup, right? Going to Houston and trying to take on this other playoff team. So I think, again, bad game for Goff. I thought that he recovered well, but still, if you're getting minus points, you're not thrilled at all when he had the 2 passing TDs with the 240 yards. And the other side, CJ Stroud, 232-1, but he let them back in the game with his 2 interceptions. Again, he just seemed off again, and yet again, Nico Collins was out. Now, John Mechie 3 provided a spark, but that didn't last throughout the whole game.
No, and the thing with Goff that's so disappointing is we like this matchup for him because we knew the Texans would be able to keep up an offense. But Goff did throw a lot. He threw 30 times, but and just didn't put up a good fantasy day. Now he gets the Jaguars and the Colts the next 2 weeks. Like, those are running, like, just they can just run and run and run. So Jared Goff, I'm not going to trust in fantasy. And then Stroud, it's been a really long time since he's done anything. Now, he didn't have Nico Collins like we thought he would. They get the Cowboys, Titans, and Jacksonville next 3 weeks. Those are fine teams, but like, again, they gave Joe Mixon 24 carries last night. He was atrocious on them. At least he got the touchdown. But like, those teams you can run on. So I'm not going to love CJ Stroud moving forward either until at least I see Nico Collins makes a big difference. Now, Sam Darnold is a guy I'm giving up on as well. I mean, I never really trusted him, but after the hot start, it's been quarterback 27, 13, 16. He had one good week with 7, quarterback 7 finish. And then yesterday, quarterback 20 so far in the week. 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Justin Jefferson only gets 5 for 48 and 9 targets. TJ Hawkinson does have a good game. We'll talk about him in the good segment. But Sam Darnold, just like, he's fallen back to earth. That was against the Jaguars, like the terrible Jaguars.
Yeah, these are those dependent quarterbacks I'm talking about. Like, all the operations have to work well because they're going to make some mental mistakes at some point. And they were in the red zone quite a bit in this game, even when they were kicking the 4 field goals with John Parker Romo. They moved the ball fine. When they got down, they would make dumb mistakes. And all Sam Darnold looking at bad reads, they're not going to bench him. Yet going forward, they do get the Titans this week. The Titans can be a little bit tricky in pass defense. I'm not going to rush to play Darnold with this one. I think you have to be very careful with these guys. They're limited physically. They're not going to get you too much in the running game. Actually, Darnold ran more than I thought. I mean, Goff didn't run at all, so he's not going to help you erase some of that bad mojo, and no touchdowns there. The funny thing is, Michelle, I played Sam Darnold over Jayden Daniels, and I made the right call this week because he had slightly more points than Jayden Daniels. He had 202 yards passing, only 5 rushing yards in that matchup against the Steelers. So they did a good job containing him on the ground, and the touchdowns went to Austin Eckler and Jeremy McNichols. So again, I thought that could happen for Jayden Daniels, but I feel confident that a little bit more confident Daniels will go back into the top 5, much more confident than Darnold rebounding into the top 12.
So I'm more confident in Daniels moving forward for sure. But I will say it's after his hot start, it's not been amazing for Jayden Daniels. The last 6 weeks finishes quarterback 12, 11, 30, 11, 10, 23. So he hasn't finished above top 10 in any of the last 6 games he played. And he gets the Eagles next week. That's a hard defense. So I'm going to have him ranked probably at quarterback 11, 12, but it's not going to be that super high upside that we saw earlier. I'm getting a little bit nervous about how high he can finish in any given week. Now, Baker Mayfield against the 49ers only has 116 passing yards, 1 touchdown. Baker, I'm not scared of, right? He didn't have his 2 wide receivers. It was just a weird game overall. They get the bye week, and then they should have Mike Evans back. And then the next 3 weeks are the Giants, the Panthers, and the Raiders. Like, I would not be dropping Baker Mayfield if I'm the fantasy manager.
Yeah, when you look at Baker Mayfield, I mean, yeah, it can only get better with Mike Evans returning. They also had the anomalous scoring of both Rachaad White and Bucky Irving in this game. That was not going to happen necessarily with the 49ers in this matchup. So basically, you flip one of those to touchdowns, a few more yards. It's a decent game there for Baker Mayfield. So when you look at overall, I mean, Mayfield's going to have to throw a ton. We know this. The Bucs defense is really stinking right now, so you're going to see a lot of volume based here from Mayfield. So I'm okay with Mayfield going forward here. They'll regroup a little bit this week during a bye.
Yeah. Now, 2 offenses that are not going to regroup, and they just are terrible. They're terrible. The Jets offense and the Bears offense. Now, I don't know how to fix the Bears offense. I don't know if it's Caleb Williams' problem. I don't know if it's coaching problem. I lean towards coaching problem. They got to make a change there, but nobody did anything in that game that you're happy about for fantasy. Caleb Williams, 120 passing yards on the day on 30 pass attempts. And then the Jets offense, it wasn't as bad as the Bears, but it was close. Aaron Rodgers looks terrible. Breece Hall had another bad week. Garrett Wilson, 5 for 41. And then Devontae Adams has 13 targets in the game. Comes down for 6 for 31 yards. Like, the Jets do have an easy schedule moving forward, but I mean, come on. I don't know what you do with either of these offenses.
Yeah, I mean, the Bears, let me sum this up. I mean, Caleb Williams is holding the ball too long. I mean, this Patriots team did not have any success rushing the passer until this game, right? They had 16 sacks in the season. They had 9 in this game. That should not be happening. That's Caleb Williams holding the ball too long. This offensive line is not built to do that. They're built to run. Again, another team that's not figured out that, hey, you got to run a little bit. Your quarterback's dependent. You get DeAndre Swift going. That was an embarrassing performance there where they didn't feed him the ball enough. You need to have the flow sometimes with these offenses. And the Bears had that for those 2 brief games, right? At home, we saw it, I think it was the Panthers and Jaguars, or the Jaguars game was in London. But since that brief flash from Caleb Williams, you've seen really nothing happen here for this offense. And I think Shane Waldron probably is a problem and needs to go. He's not quite sure what to do with the balance and how to use the weapons, and that's a problem big time. And the Jets are just terrible. I think with Aaron Rodgers, he's trying to do too much. And Devontae Adams, I feel like he's pressing when he's dropping the balls. I don't know. I thought Todd Downing was going to be an improvement over what they had with Nathaniel Hackett, but they also have no idea what they're doing. And maybe it's almost like these teams have too many weapons and their coaches don't know how to kind of streamline them to get the most out of everyone, which is, again, really bad coaching.
it just is not fun to watch. Like it's not. They have all these weapons too, so it doesn't make sense. And then I mean, both of these teams have a lot of weapons. I'll say like you can keep playing Garrett Wilson and even maybe Adams with in Hall because the schedule is easy. But like the Bears offense, I'm done with. They get the Packers, the Vikings, the Lions, the 49ers, the Vikings, the Lions over the next 6 weeks. Not going to feel good about any of those defenses or any of those games. Maybe DeAndre Swift in some of those, but brutal schedule. Moving on to a running back that struggled and three wide receivers here. J.K. Dobbins. He puts up 50 rushing yards. He has 5 receiving yards, 0 touchdowns, 15 carries. The bigger worry is that Gus Edwards came back and got 10 carries. And then Hassan Haskins steals the 1-yard rushing touchdown. Herbert has a 4-yard rushing touchdown. Thank goodness for that rushing touchdown for Herbert because he did very little in the passing game. But now that Gus Edwards is back, I think J.K. Dobbins might be kind of that up and down player, a little bit riskier.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't hesitate to put Edwards back into a key rushing role. And the Haskins thing was weird, right? I mean, maybe it was a bit of, I think he was on the Titans at one point. So maybe it was like a weird revenge touchdown that he wanted to get for one of his Michigan boys. I'm talking about Jim Harbaugh. So I don't know. That was kind of interesting that they went in that direction. They're definitely opening up the passing game a little bit more. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean Justin Herbert's going to put up big numbers, but it's less dependent on the run. They've been smashing some teams. It's going to get harder to do that as they go forward because their competition is going to get better, including the Bengals this week. They really preyed on the weak teams in the NFL, the ones that don't have a lot of offense. But now you get the Bengals who are going to put up points on them. You figure that's not going to help Dobbins either. He's got to get involved in the passing game, but they don't seem to involve him too much. They want the receivers, Lad McConkey and Quentin Johnson and Josh Palmer making the most of it, as well as Will Dissly. Those seem to be the 4 guys they want to throw to much there with the Chargers. So again, the usage is bound to go down. If they're passing more, you have Edwards, you have now Haskins you have to worry about in the mix. Yeah, I mean, you just have to look for the matchup-based plays for Dobbins now that you're not guaranteeing him the feature volume.
Now, 3 wide receivers, terrible games. Brian Thomas Jr., 2 receptions, 12 yards against the Vikings. Devonta Smith, 2 receptions, 14 yards against the Cowboys. And CeeDee Lamb, 6 receptions, 21 yards on 10 targets. Cooper Rush had 45 passing yards. The Cowboys scored 6 points. Obviously worried about CeeDee Lamb. You probably like 10 targets. You're probably just going to have to keep playing him. Devonta Smith, I think the thing with him is if he's going to have a good game, the opposing offense has to be able to put up some points against the Eagles. And like the games where he stinks, those teams just can't. Like they just didn't have to throw, and when they did, it was to AJ Brown. He got those big chunk plays. But like they get the Commanders next week, so they should be able to score, at least be able to keep up with the Eagles. So I'm fine with Devonta Smith moving forward. Brian Thomas Jr. I think has to stay on your bench until we see something more from Mac Jones because he was terrible, or Trevor Lawrence comes back, but. It's been 2 straight terrible weeks, and he got 3 targets in this game. You can't play him with Mac Jones.
Yeah, what we've learned is the rookies can go through these slumps, right? We've seen it with Marvin Harrison Jr. He's had a stretch. We've seen it with Malik Neighbors. Like, they're rookies. They're going to have some tough spots, especially as we get close to the, quote, rookie wall here. They're not used to playing this deep in the season. Their seasons are usually over at this point in college. So there's that factor that you can't totally ignore. I still think Thomas is a special receiver, but I think it was good when Christian Kirk and some of these other guys were deflecting the coverage. But once Thomas is a mark guy, maybe not ready for that elevated role. Now, I will talk about CeeDee Lamb. Now, he needs to stop whining. That was ridiculous that he whined about the sunlight coming through Cowboy Stadium at a particular angle. And Jerry Jones did not appreciate that comment one bit. That's an excuse, man. I mean, everyone else was making plays on the winning team in that game. You got to make plays. Your team's down. They need you. There's no Dak Prescott. So CeeDee Lamb just needs to stop whining. I think he'll have a good rebound game. However, they are playing the Texans back at home on Monday night, and their secondary, we saw what Amon-Ra St. Brown did. They are vulnerable in the slot. I think you also have to attest some of Lamb's game to Cooper DeJean. He's a very good young slot corner, and he did a really good job in that game. But that's not going to be the case against the Texans.
Now we got to get past the negativity, right, and look towards the positivity. So we're going to talk about the best performances of the week, the guys that, bigger names that actually did what we wanted them to do. And then we'll get into the most surprising plays of the week and discuss whether we think that will continue moving forward. We'll get into all of that after a quick break. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or even an agonizing second overtime, which is why they created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like you, the fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. You know what gave me a bit of fan fuel this week as a Steelers fan? That Mike Williams 32-yard game-winning touchdown. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com. Shipped nationwide.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Every Friday, we bring you our 6-pack of Prize Picks, 6 picks of the week there for you to think about there to play. And what is Prize Picks? It's easy to get in on the game if you haven't been there before. It's the best place to get real money sports action with more than 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long only on Prize Picks. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if your player gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join those 10 million users. Sign up today. Prize Picks invented the flex play as well, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't come through. That's really great here. So sign up today and you'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Just go with it. We always give you some good quarterback rushing props. I did like Bryce Young, Brock Purdy. Ultimately went with Kyler Murray. We fell a little short on that one, but those guys really came through, Young and Purdy, with some scrambling in their game. So there's all kinds of things you can look at looking at Prize Picks. So you can go more, you can go less. Fantasy show, we tend to go more, but you can run your game the way you want. Again, that's only at prizepicks.com. Prizepicks.com. Run your game. All right, Michelle, it is time to continue the show. Let's get all that negative energy out of here and go to some positive energy. It was good. We like to get rid of the negativity first. So let's look at the good quarterback performances. If you have Jalen Hurts, you've been enjoying this season. You've been enjoying the last month in particular. 4 TDs for him again. He's just dominating, 56 rushing yards. He just destroyed the Cowboys, really, with whatever he wanted to do in that game. So Jalen Hurts is feeling it. Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray. These guys just seem to be in a total groove right now, and all these things seem to be trending in a positive direction for them.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts, quarterback 4-1-2-2 over the last 4 weeks, 30 fantasy points yesterday. And his schedule looks like solid. Where they're going to have to compete against the Commanders, the Rams, the Ravens, the Panthers. He should be able to destroy Steelers, Commanders, Cowboys. I love his schedule. If you have him, you're happy. Brock Purdy has been so consistent. Top 5 quarterback each of the last 2 weeks. Prior to that, quarterback 6, quarterback 8. He gets the Seahawks next week. Always destroys the Seahawks. So Brock Purdy is getting, doing his thing. He scored 23.8 fantasy points yesterday, only had 2 touchdowns, but a lot of passing yards. And then Kyler Murray, we were saying this would be his last down week because it was against the Jets. Nope. He had a great game. 3 touchdowns, ended up as the quarterback 4 so far in the week. They do have a bye this week, but we were talking about before this game that we loved his schedule after the bye. The Seahawks, the Vikings, the Seahawks, the Panthers, the Rams. It's Murray's going to win some people leagues this week or this year.
Yeah, we've advocated for him a lot, that he was a good value. And again, we've told you on this podcast several times, you wanted to go early for Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen, or you wait later for Kyler Murray, and Jayden Daniels. If you took anyone in between, the guy should have been Brock Purdy, right? But CJ Stroud, we were anti. Anthony Richardson, we didn't buy. We didn't totally want you to invest too highly in Patrick Mahomes, just didn't belong. Lamar Jackson, of course, he's finished right where we thought. But yeah, this is the type of quarterback you want, a Murray or Daniels, who can put up points in different ways. Murray did with the rushing touchdowns this week. He did with touchdowns. I mean, the one thing that's a bummer that you could be greedy about with Murray, more rushing yards. Unfortunately, James Conner and Trey Benson and Murray DeMarcado want to just run the ball themselves. Come on. Let Kyler run a little bit more. That's the only thing missing from resume, but big season and a big season finish to come. And by the way, talk about the Jets offense. I think the Jets defense has quit too. It's pretty embarrassing at this point.
Yeah, it just seems like the whole team has given up. So I guess we don't have to be worried about the Jets defense any longer. Two running backs that had a great week. Bijan Robinson, 116 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, added 28 yards as a receiver. They lost this game, but he was getting a ton of work, 28 fantasy points against the Saints. I mean, he's been super, super consistent after a little bit of a slow start. Running back 4, 10, 6, 11, and 1 so far this week. He's now back up to running back 4 in fantasy points on the year. He's doing what we wanted him to do. That's great to see, unlike Breece Hall. And then Chuba Hubbard, he has a huge game like we expected him to against the Giants. 28 carries, 153 yards, and a touchdown. I will say, though, like he's had a good stretch here, but they get a week 11 bye, right? Then Jonathan Brooks should be back. It's not so much about Brooks I'm worried about. I'm worried about the schedule. The Chiefs, the Buccaneers, the Eagles. I think I trade him now. If you're still able to trade and someone wants to buy him, I'm trading away Chuba Hubbard while I can.
Yeah, and then make sure you inflate his value. You can say, hey, look, Jonathan Brooks is not fully back. Miles Sanders was just carted off with a foot injury. Like, he's going to get 25 carries a game, whatever. He's going to dominate. So you can sell some people on him very easily. You got the new contract, so it was good. He had an injury scare late in the game. I thought he was down for good here, but he walked off and it was okay, and he was able to touch the ball to help them win the game. The other thing about Bijan Robinson I will mention, I'll add a little note to that. Did you see the sequence, Michelle, where they were slamming Tyler Algier 3 times at the goal line, and they were trying to score, slam, slam, slam. And then 4th down comes Bijan Robinson and basically walks in to the left side. I'm like, this is ridiculous, guys. Bijan should be getting the goal line work. So maybe Zach Robinson saw that and said, look, Bijan needs to be the guy all the time here as much as possible. You just need to put Tyler Algier to give him a breather once in a while, but don't slam Tyler Algier near the goal line. I hate when coaches do that. And look, maybe their eyes open a little bit that, this was a lot easier if we just run Robinson. We probably would have scored on 2nd down if it hadn't been for forcing Algier there. So that's good news, I think, when you want coaches to fail and learn a little bit so they can see what we're seeing as well.
And now going to the wide receivers, George Pickens, 5 for 91 and a touchdown, 18 fantasy points. He's now with Russell Wilson. He's finished as the wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 5. Now, he does have a wide receiver 43 performance in there in one of the games. But again, in that game, he had 2 touchdowns taken away from him that he caught. They were just, one a penalty and then one was reversed with his toe slightly out. So he's just going to be a beast with Russell Wilson. You keep playing him. Calvin Ridley, since DeAndre Hopkins left, he's been doing his thing as well. 2 of the last 3 weeks, he's been a top 6 guy. This last week, 5 receptions, 84 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So I guess, and that's with both Mason Rudolph and now with Will Levis. So with DeAndre Hopkins gone, even though Hopkins wasn't doing much, Ridley's doing his thing.
Yeah, and this week, just looking quickly ahead, I mean, you have the Vikings who give up a lot of wide receiver points, so Ridley should be in good position there. If you're the Vikings, will be playing with the lead, so that should lead to just more garbage, much like we saw Levis to Ridley. And then on George Pickens, they're playing the Ravens. The Ravens really struggle all over the field in coverage. They might not have Kyle Hamilton. We'll see about his status for this game, but that would leave a lot of the deep middle available here for Wilson and Pickens to operate. So great matchups for both of these guys ahead.
And the tight end that you really like this week, he did his thing, 9 targets, 8 receptions, 72 yards. He didn't get the touchdown, so he finished his tight end 6 on the week, but like the targets and the receptions and the yards are what we care about more. The touchdowns can come at any point. He led the team in both the targets, receptions, and receiving yards. He clearly is going to be Sam Darnold's like kind of crutch here. Love that for him, and he seems to be back fully healthy.
Yeah, I mean, they also made a bit of a pivot. They're using more two tight end sets. Josh Oliver was also really involved, much to the chagrin of anybody who wanted Jordan Addison to do anything like we did. He really fell apart. Our sleepers, Goff and Addison, did not come through, but not because of our fault, because of their poor usage. So I look at that. Are they pivoting here to using two tight ends with Justin Jefferson? Or are they trying to do something that makes Sam Darnold more comfortable? We have to watch that going forward. But again, playing the Titans this week, I don't think they'll change that game plan.
Now there is a lot of surprising performances as well, right? And you're still trying to win your leagues. You got pickups you got to make on waivers, and we get into a full waiver show on Tuesday. But to give you a little sneak peek, we're going to get into the most surprising plays, let you know if we really believe that it'll keep up or not. We'll get into that to finish up today's show and our reactions to week 10 after a quick break. This episode is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL and $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. Minimum purchases may apply.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is also brought to you by FanDuel. That's America's #1 sports book. Get ready to dive into Week 11, but first, there's one more Week 10 game that you can get in on the action for. Dolphins-Rams. I like the Rams to take care of business at home with their improving defense and their loaded offense. So I do like that with the Dolphins going cross country here for that game in Los Angeles, because right now it's a good time to get in on a FanDuel, whether you're going for it tonight or Week 11, because new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets with a winning bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need in one place to place live bets on the NFL right there for you. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets again if you win your first $5 bet. That's only at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Michelle, time to close the show. We've gone through a lot on today's show, so there's a little bit more to close the show. Let's first talk about some injury news. It's probably not looking good for Dalton Kincaid to play. Looks like the Chiefs get a break again. Keon Coleman, Amari Cooper, Dalton Kincaid all could be out here for the Bills in this matchup coming up on Sunday. So if you have somewhere to pivot, I would go there. Maybe even Dawson Knox right there on that same team based on these injuries. And then Tank Bigsby. Look, Travis Etienne was kind of getting back there and eating into his touches. So I don't know if they're going to force Bigsby in there. They have nothing really to play for. They're the worst team in the AFC, and they have a very tough matchup this week against the Lions run defense. So maybe some things that you can handle and move on from, but nobody major this week.
Yeah, I mean, Tank Bigsby, I think, you enjoyed him for a couple weeks. So that's pretty much done. And like you brought up, Dawson Knox will definitely be on our waiver wire show. But let's talk about some guys who had really good performances this week that were shocking. We got to start with Austin Eckler. And now it's not too shocking to us because he was our sleeper of the week at the running back position on Friday's show. But he scored 2 touchdowns. I didn't expect him to be the running back 5 on the week. I'll say that, even when we said he was a sleeper. 13 carries, 44 yards. He only had 1 reception for 7 yards. We liked him because he could get receptions. So he did most of it on the ground. Now, Brian Robinson Jr. didn't play in this game, and he gets a very tough matchup against the Eagles this week, but they need him. And I do think his reception should go back up. So I think Austin Eckler, he could continue putting up points. He looked really, really good too. That's the thing.
Yeah, their offensive line is good, and the Brian Robinson injury is interesting, right? It always looks like there's a chance he could play. Then we get to the weekend, and you look at the inactives, he's not out there, then okay, automatically Eckler, and then Jeremy McNichols is probably has a 50-50 shot to score a touchdown when he's out there behind Eckler. So Eckler does look good. And look, these older guys, Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler, we were a little bit down on with the Commanders, but they are playing key roles at this point. And I would keep playing Eckler. Like if I wouldn't expect Robinson to play, right? Short week turnaround. I don't see him suddenly being trotted out there. They maybe want to get him that extra week and the mini bye to rest. So Eckler should have this backfield to himself. It's going to be pretty good to watch him in action. This Eagles game script could go negative pretty quickly. So I love Eckler this week. Just keep playing him as long as Robinson's out. Really play whoever the lead Commander's back is because that running game is that good.
And honestly, against the Eagles, I'm going to prefer Eckler over Brian Robinson, who's mostly just, a runner anyways in that matchup. Now, Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall for the 49ers both had really good games. Jennings had 7 receptions, 93 yards, and 11 targets. Like, he's not going to be on waivers, and it's kind of what we expected. I didn't expect him to lead the team in targets and receptions and receiving yards. He didn't get the touchdown, but I mean, when either Debo or Brandon Ayuk are not there, Jennings is a really good play. This was Jennings' first game playing without Ayuk. And then the Ricky Pearsall, he looks like he's going to be a necessity for this team. He had a 46-yard touchdown. That was a really nice run after the catch. And he brought in 4 receptions, 73 yards total. I don't think it's going to be consistent for him at all, but he's going to be on the field, and he gets the Seahawks next week. So I do think he's a viable option in good matchups like that.
Yeah, it's actually getting more complicated for us to figure out the 49ers because last year we could find out is the Brandon Ayuk game, is it Deebo Samuel game, is it George Kittle game, is it a McCaffrey game? Well, every game is a McCaffrey game. But when you look at this, right, I mean, there was only 5 guys who caught passes for them: Pearsall, Jennings, Samuel, Kittle, and McCaffrey, right? They all made plays of 30 yards or more in this game against the Buccaneers. So somebody's not going to get theirs. George Kittle was fortunate to get his touchdown. Deebo Samuel was definitely a disappointment in relation to what Jennings and Pearsall did. So somebody is going to not get theirs each week with McCaffrey back because he just eats into so much of the production offensively, whether it's catching passes or running. So that's interesting going forward. What this means is a great finish ahead for Brock Purdy, no matter what. I mean, he's going to destroy it with all these weapons out there. And I think they're kind of doing a committee matchup base, but they actually might be more dangerous because you have Jennings and Pearsall versus just Ayuk. So I'm excited for this passing game. You just need the 49ers to keep playing teams that can score with them. So it's giving all these guys a chance. If Purdy can throw for 353 yards, everyone has a chance to do something on this team.
And the 49ers schedule is hard. Like, they have the Bills coming up, the Packers. Like, it's not an easy schedule. So that's going to happen. That's why we love Purdy. Jennings, Pearsall's definitely a top option to pick up on waivers. Now, this guy's definitely on waivers, and it's the most shocking play of the week. And we definitely, anytime he made a play, we said that helped nobody. But Marquez Valdes-Scantling for the Saints. Yes, he's on the Saints, in case you didn't know. 3 receptions, 109 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So far, he is the wide receiver 2 on the week in fantasy points. He gets the Browns next week, who have allowed the 2nd most fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position this season. It seems like with Chris Olave out, with Rashid Shaheed out, MVS is that deep threat for Derek Carr. Would he even be an option for you on waivers to start him this next week?
Yeah, it's actually lining up because the Browns give up a lot of big plays to wide receivers on the outside. And basically, MVS was kind of in a hybrid Olave, Rashid Shaheed, home run shot role. And maybe they didn't expect it, right? The Falcons didn't maybe expect, okay, we're going to throw the ball downfield because it was really a drop off in the passing game. When it wasn't him making plays, it was a bit of Taysom Hills, a bit of Alvin Kamara, not much else to see there. Just so many people are out. It's not just Olave and Rashid Shaheed, but Bub Means and Cedric Wilson, and all these guys are out. Someone's got to catch the ball, right? So I think when you look at this MBS, I don't love it because you're a little bit big play dependent. I mean, you only had 3 catches, 2 went for touchdowns, so a little bit scary. But if there's a team that gives up a lot of big play receiving touchdowns, it is the Browns, and they come into the Superdome this week. So if you need him as a wide receiver 3 with all these buys, I think you play him, but don't just go in there. Oh, he's going to be the pickup of the year. I mean, when you see Jamar Chase as wide receiver 1 and MVS as wide receiver 2, you know something's wrong with that week.
Seriously. Some other guys that had a good week. John Mechie, 5 for 74 and a touchdown. He got a lot of playing time without Nico Collins there and had by far his best game of his career. Then there's Alec Pierce for the Colts, 4 for 81 and a touchdown. Listen, Joe Flacco stinks, but he's throwing it up to Alec Pierce. And then Mike Williams, he barely played. He played 11% of the snaps because he didn't get to practice with the Steelers this week. Like he just got there. He barely ran anything. He didn't even know what play to run on this play, but Russell Wilson told him just to run deep and like kind of just told him where to go. And he catches the game-winning 32-yard touchdown. It was not an easy catch at that. It was impressive catch by Mike Williams. He gets the Ravens next week. Alec Pierce gets the Jets next week, and John Mechie gets the Cowboys. Rank those 3 of who you believe would be the best moving forward throughout the year.
Yeah, this is hard. I mean, let's watch the Michael Pittman injury, but if that was something that's going to linger and he's going to stay out, I do like Alec Pierce because it seems like weirdly him and Joe Flacco have some chemistry going on. The Mike Williams, again, he could be like this in a lot of games, right? Big play, the shot guy. And they already have George Pickens to do that. So I think he's a distant third here. And then Mechie, let's see. Does he incorporate himself as that third target that replaces Stephon Diggs, or is he just taking advantage of Nico Collins not being in there? I mean, they did throw a little bit more to Dalton Schultz as well and try to get others involved. But to me, he definitely separated from the other receivers they had, right? That he could be the number 3 easily with Collins and Dell. So there's some there, but I would go definitely Pierce if Pittman is out. Then I go to that direction, and then I go Mike Williams.
I actually like Mike Williams is interesting, right? Because again, it was only 11% of plays. Like that's going to go way up. Calvin Austin, we got to keep an eye on his injury, but if he's injured, he's going to play a lot of time, and he fits so well with Russell Wilson. Like, so I am actually most interested, I think, in Mike Williams, but I am a Steelers fan, so maybe I'm just wearing my bias glasses here. John Mechie, like when Nico Collins comes back, I just don't really care to have him. And this game was one that Stroud had to throw. They get the Cowboys next week, so even if Collins for some reason has to miss another game, but that's just gonna be a running game, like straight up running game. Alec Pierce, sure, but you just need that long touchdown. And it's if Michael Pittman is out, he could keep it up, just a risky play as well as Mike Williams would be risky. Yeah. And one last guy I want to bring up here for no reason whatsoever. It's Tylan Wallace. No, he's not going to do anything. He played just 19% of the snaps in week 11. He doesn't play on this team. There's no reason he's going to start. He got the one long catch for a touchdown because the Bengals didn't push him out of bounds. Like that's literally it.
Yeah, I would look at Rashad Bateman. However, he's been involved a little bit in the last few weeks. I mean, he's a good pickup. And then Zay Flowers has been so good that the attention has to go to him quite a bit. And he had this Isaiah Likely injury as well. We'll see if that carries over into the Steelers matchup. And the Steelers can be beat a little bit downfield. We saw that with Terry McLaurin this week. So, yeah, Tylan Wallace, flash of the pan. Be careful of jumping on those guys. I mean, these are all big play threats, so you might get some big plays, but you got to just accept if you're plugging them in as a wide receiver 3 based on a matchup or desperation, it's a little bit boom or bust, right? So you have to accept that. And maybe I just want to play them in the right matchups if I'm going to add them to my roster.
Yeah. And Tylan Wallace is even that guy that you play in a good matchup. Just leave him on the waivers. That is it for today's episode. Thank you to all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We'll be back tomorrow to dig way more into the waivers to talk about the Monday Night Football game if there's anything crazy that goes on. But we'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a great night. Bye, y'all.